My name is Dustin. I'm a grateful Christian in recovery from drugs and alcohol. My sobriety date is September 1st of 2017. I have a sponsor and I'm willing to sponsor other men. I've worked the 12 steps and recently started going to CR and am looking forward to finding a sponsor in that program. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share my experience, strength, and hope, and most important, God's love and grace. I began using alcohol at a very young age. I remember that alcohol was always around me growing up, and my grandpa would allow me to have sips of alcohol around the age of 8. My life with my parents was a bit dysfunctional as they struggled with alcohol and substance abuse as well. They also had me at a young age, and they didn't really quite have the tools to properly provide for me and to raise me as they would like to have. My dad was in and out of prison. My mom bounced back between different homes. We moved a lot. I remember never really having any security. I also experienced some trauma watching my mom and dad fight, and sometimes it would turn physical. I remember times walking around the age of 4, I would wake up in the middle of the night, no one would be home, and I would be scared, and I would cry myself back to sleep. That was the beginning of some deep-rooted abandonment issues I discovered later in life. I also remember being taken from my mom by my dad around the age of 5, and the police having to come and get me back, take me back to my mom. At the age of 10, I went to live with my grandmother, and this is where I had a sense of security. The only problem with that was she was in her late 80s, and I could get away with almost anything. There was zero accountability. She tried her best to provide for me all I needed. When I was 11 years old, I took some whiskey from my dad as he laid passed out drunk enough. I drank enough to really get sick. I remember saying, "I'll never do this again," but oh, how I was wrong. When I was in junior high, me and some friends started to drink and smoke on the weekends. It really was boring where I come from. We would have bonfires, and drinking was the thing to do to pass the time. I drank recreationally for a while until I was 18, and then it really took off. I was in a relationship with my high school sweetheart, and we ended up breaking up, and it devastated me, and I did not have the proper coping tools, so I started to drink daily. This was also the start of some really poor decisions that I made. When I was 23, my daughter was born, but I didn't know she was mine until she was almost 2 years old. And this became another reason for me to use more because I was not prepared. I continued to use alcohol, and by the age of 25, I started to incorporate prescription drugs into my life. I was working at a food factory in my hometown when I met my son's mother. We were only dating for like 3 months, and she became pregnant with my son. I told myself at this time I would do whatever it took to be a good father, not fully understanding that I was under the control of my addiction and became a slave to it for many years. My addiction became my existence, and as the years went on, I continued to climb that dark ladder of drug addiction. I would drink every day and take a handful of prescription medications that I would get off the street. I became everything I said I would not be in my addiction. My son's mom did not use, and I would lie, steal, and cheat on her for 9 years. She continued to enable me for many years. I lost my job. I worked for 5 years, and I was unable to hold down any work for the next 7. I tried to work again, and I was fired for being high on the job. I would try to do odd jobs, but just get high, and the money I was getting paid was already owed out before I even got it. I began to steal from my family and my son's mom for many years. By the year 2015, my family finally cut me off and was unwilling to enable me any further. I was so upset, thinking, how could they do this to me, not knowing at the time that this was a huge blessing. I would bounce from couch to couch in some very shady places. Even in these places, I would find myself not welcome. In the same year, I made a campsite in the woods behind my grandma's house. I never bought a tent because I'd spend every cent on drugs and alcohol. So I made a shelter out of tarps and things I found lying around. The sad thing is I was content in that tent. I had all I needed, I thought, and I was able to get my drugs, and I could still see my son since I was just down the road from him. At this time, I was using meth and heroin. intravenously, and I was running the neighborhood all through the night, scaring the neighbors and my family. In all this time of darkness, I was fortunate to have never been in any legal issues. This all changed in late August 2017. I was up for many days, and I weighed about 110 pounds, and I was very weak. I went into a store and stole some items that would lead me in front of a judge in Jackson County, Ohio. This judge saw a life in me worth saving and sentenced me to Justin's Place Recovery Program. I had to be locked up to be set free. At this time, I had never experienced recovery or known Jesus. I was full of fear, and I was having so many thoughts about running away from this. I thought my life was over, and I would have to leave everything I ever had known, including my kids. My mom was crying in the courtroom, and my mom said to him, my son was crying in the courtroom that day, and my mom said to him, "It'll be okay, you'll get your dad back." And I thought of this every day, and I never truly was his dad. I was always putting drugs and alcohol ahead of my family and my kids. This was something that motivated me to make a change. So after 40 days in jail and detoxing in there, I was on my first flight to my first recovery program ever. I was full of fear and anxiety, and in my mind I thought I was going to Passages Malibu. I arrived at the Campbell Lodge and ended up on the floor at a homeless shelter for 5 nights. I then went to a firehouse where I began my journey. I recall many times when I wanted to leave, but I had great guys speaking truth into the lies I would tell myself. This was the hardest year of my life, but the most beneficial thing I've ever done. It was the beginning of finding myself. I was able to find myself and develop a relationship with God. I was connected with a community of men who loved me until I could love myself. I started to pray and read the Bible daily. This is also where I experienced peace for the first time in my life. After my time in LaBelle, I felt a calling to join the peer mentor team and help other men coming in the program. It was very hard to look within myself and focus on my part and the behaviors that led me to the program. I always have been good at buying the lies I would tell myself and then acting on them. I would tell myself I wasn't worth living and I should just put a needle in my arm. I see today that this all stemmed from fear of the unknown and fear of success. All my life I've lived one way my entire life. It's all I ever knew. I never knew there was freedom in sobriety. I learned to live in the moment, one day at a time. I was able to work the 12 steps in a month. The steps are very important to me, and they help guide me to a relationship with God. This was good for me because I never had recovery before, and it allowed me to fully understand what each step meant. Step 1, admitting that I was powerless in my life had become unmanageable. At this point, it wasn't hard for me to see that since I was living homeless and not having the will to live anymore, I couldn't understand all the years I was battling this addiction that I never once thought I had a problem. Step 1 allowed me to look at that. Step 2 allowed me to know that I can be restored to sanity through the relationship with God, and I realized the things I were doing were just completely insane. 3 helped me to surrender my will over to God and let Him fight for me. 4 was where I had to first be honest to myself and start to clean house. 5 is where I first experienced the feeling of freedom, as these things were no longer holding me down. 6 allowed me to look at my character defects and work to make a change. 7 allowed me to make a clear change in my defects and to practice humility. 8 allowed me to be able to start the process of healings from relationships. 9 allowed me to become humble, to work on healing those relationships, and to do so. 10 allowed me to focus on my part in becoming better and admitting when I was wrong. 11 helped me to build a closer connection to God and find ways to keep my peace. 12 is something I try to do daily by spreading the message of hope to whomever I come across. Through all this, I was able to focus on some deep-rooted traumas and behavioral issues that were underneath my addiction. The brotherhood and bonds I was able to create during this time was so helpful to me. These men helped me to become the man I am today. All my life, I wanted to have good friends, and I learned it was me that needed to change. The program helped me see my flaws and work on changing them. This was an amazing experience for me that opened the door to where I am today. I would go on to graduate from the program, and then I met my lovely wife, who also graduated from the Jill's Place program in the same year. Little funny story I'm going to throw in here. When I was 3 days in the program, I witnessed a baptism at the beach, and I saw a woman coming out of the water. I remember being so happy and excited for her, but I was still too scared to get baptized, as I was full of shame and I never wanted to draw attention to myself. That woman is now my current wife. At this time, I didn't think anything about her or thought I would see her again. We developed a strong relationship based on Jesus, and it has been an amazing journey thus far. I had to learn what a healthy relationship looked like and what God says about relationships. My relationship with my family and my kids have been restored thanks to Jesus and His grace. Some relationships will never be the same, and I had to accept that. The relationships with my family and kids are now long distance, but they can visit and I can go there anytime. My kids are doing well, both in a good place. My daughter will graduate high school this year, and my son is looking to get his first job. We get to FaceTime daily, and my daughter messages me that she loves me every night. These things would never happen if I was still living in the dark. I was working as a program staff at the end of my time in the program after graduation for a little over a year, and then I took a job as a case manager at the Campbell Lodge shelter in February of 2019. I still work there today. I'm accountable at my job, and we have a family environment. I feel like I'm able to tap into the gifts God placed in me to assist others who are struggling at St. Matthew's House because of where I've been and what He's done in my life. In my role at St. Matthew's House, I have been provided training to be a best service to our residents. I'm able to help provide resources that they need when they may be unaware of what resources that they can get connected to. I get to meet people where they are and spread the love of Jesus. I recently was able to adopt 2 kittens, which you probably saw up there. They're awesome. Who make my life more interesting, and they bring even more joy. I find myself having something to take care of, which allows me to focus more on them and not in my head. This is also helpful for my mental health. My wife and I got married during the COVID pandemic, and even though our family could not attend, the family that God provided us through our relationships with our brothers and sisters in Christ were there for us, and it was an amazing time. Through my relationship with St. Matthew's House, I am also going back to school to pursue a degree in Christian addiction studies. I am able to do this through the scholarship that's awarded to graduates. What a blessing. On September 1st, I celebrated 5 years of sobriety, and that's... And that's only by God's grace and love. Although I still have many struggles, there has not been anything that's been more powerful than God to allow me to give up on this wonderful way of life. We recently went through some changes in our lives, and they're just new ways to grow. I and my wonderful wife get to work for an organization that helps save our lives. Through it all, knowing Jesus has been the most powerful thing I've got to experience. He continues to bless me and open my eyes to see His will for my life. Numbers 6:34-26. The Lord blesses you and keep you, make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn His face toward you and give you peace. We're looking to purchase, me and my wife now are looking to purchase our first home together, which is amazing to go from even think about being homeless to home ownership. I still can't wrap my mind around that. But God has plans that we don't even need to know about all the time. I see that when I first put trust in God, He delivers. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and future. I believe that my God and my community of awesome people have been placed in my life to keep me standing firm. When I struggle, I have a work family that wants to hear about my struggles, and I've learned to be open about what's going on with me. I have multiple spiritual advisors today that help me navigate life's struggles and anything else I need to deal with. Me and Susan are also taking courses together to allow us to grow closer to the Lord and be ambassadors of Christ. We get to serve in ministries that I probably would have never served in before, like the kids' ministries and going to the hospital. We're also looking for new ways to grow together in our personal relationships. So we took marriage counseling and recently attended a healthy relationships class. We are in recovery, so it's important that we have separate programs that allow us to work on our things that we need to work on. I cannot do this alone, and I don't have to. I would like to say thank you to all who have been a part of my journey, and I'm excited to see what God has planned for my future. I still have a long way to go and much room to grow. As I close, I leave with a few Bible verses I look at daily to help me stay focused because in this world we struggle. Thank you, Jesus. The victory is yours. John 16:33. For I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. James 1:3. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because it's the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Psalms 18:16-20. This actually has a real close place in my life because I feel that he did this for me because I didn't want to surrender, right? So he sent down from on high. He took me. He drew me out of deep waters. He rescued me from my strong enemy and from those who hated me. For they were too mighty for me. They confronted me in the day of my calamity. But the Lord was my support. He brought me to a broad place, or a place of safety. He rescued me because he delighted in me. And the last one I'll leave you with is 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and sound mind. And that's all I have. Thank you.